beautiful day in the neighborhood up here in Conifer, Colorado, and thrilled to see very friendly faces, longtime friends here.
And Susan, I think you might want to turn your camera off before you leave us, or not. No worries. So Chris is an architect for building servant purpose, values, and aligned behaviors and motivation with an organizational constitution. Chris is the author of Amazon bestseller, The Culture Engine, the founder of the Purposeful Culture Group, and a blogger, podcaster, videocaster on organizational culture, servant leadership, and workplace inspiration. I know also, Chris, that you travel around a lot these days speaking and consulting. And I think based on what Dr. Zagarmi and Susan were speaking about related to employee engagement, I bet you have a point of view about this. I would love for us to talk for a few minutes, Chris, about how culture impacts engagement and motivation.
Absolutely. Well, Drea again, responding to Tina's question about the power of culture in an organization and the experience that employees have in organizations is not just their boss, it's peers, and it's the organization's kind of way of operating. And what I've discovered here over the past 15 to 20 years of doing proactive culture leadership and culture consulting, mostly for executives, is that most senior leaders have never been asked to manage their culture. So a lot of them don't know how. What they're kind of expected to do in their organization is to get stuff out the door, whatever that stuff is. And so culture is not necessarily something that leaders are naturally skilled at. And so not only have they not experienced one, a successful culture change, but they haven't led one. So a lot of the work that I do is to help increase leaders' awareness of the power of culture. That's, by the way, to do good things and to do not so good things, day to day, but that it's their responsibility as team leaders, as division leaders, as multinational company leaders to be very intentional about the culture that they've crafted, because it has a huge, huge impact on people's day-to-day well-being, motivation, and engagement. I'm always looking for research, and Dre has taught me this over the years, and one of the companies I really, really value is a company called Tiny Pulse. They're up out of Washington State here in the U.S. And in 2014, they did an engagement and culture survey that found that only 21% of employees feel strongly valued. That means our cultures are not really serving organizational members very effectively. So
Wow.
pieces that I'd love to talk about is that if leaders start to pay attention to the quality of culture, there's kind of two ends of the spectrum. And what I believe leaders would rather have is a culture that treats its employees, who in turn treat customers with trust, respect, and dignity in every interaction. Imagine that. And what unfortunately we find is that a lot of time, the experience that employees have is they are dismissed, they are discounted, and they're demeaned. And I don't know that leaders get up in the morning going, I'm going to really make my people angry today, but the way relationships play out and the dynamics of power versus cooperation and competition versus caring, it kind of leads us to that. So if we really want a positive, powerful, productive culture, it means we have to kind of be more intentional as leaders to understand what people are experiencing day to day and to maybe take a stronger hand in that.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, Chris, I know based on our work together in the past that your book, The Culture Engine, suggests that leaders create an organizational constitution to help make values and how people are treated just as important as results, as you've been talking about. So can you tell us, Chris, a little bit about what an organizational constitution is and how it can boost engagement and passion and motivation in the workplace?
Absolutely. So the language of an organizational constitution, we can go back to using like language around a Magna Carta. We can go back centuries if we'd like. But a constitution is about getting formal agreements about kind of how you'd like your team, your organization to operate. And so the language typically when I invite leaders to start to look at exactly the quality of their culture and how intentional have they been, the idea of an organizational constitution makes sense. So the four primary elements of an organizational constitution is a present day servant purpose beyond making money. Now, I know there's results we have to have. I know that making money is a very good thing for all kinds of reasons. I'm not an anti-capitalist at all. I love making money, and I love my clients to make money, but I want them to be successful while crafting a kind of workplace experience that's fun, that's dynamic, that's creative, that values people's ideas, spirits, and their skills. So the present day servant purpose around who are we serving, what are we trying to accomplish, how are we trying to make our work meaningful beyond making money or getting the widgets out the door. That's a vital first piece. The second piece is about values and behaviors. I want to speak to behaviors in a moment because, as you say, if I can get leaders to appreciate how making values and the way we treat each other as important as results, then we may have something that'll be very powerful and positive here. And the idea of how do you make values measurable, we'll get to the behaviors piece here in a second. The other two elements of an organizational constitution are strategies and goals, which most organizations do reasonably well. I think most organizations have a pretty good feel for what they're trying to accomplish from a results standpoint, a performance standpoint. What we find is that organizations are inconsistently holding people accountable for those. But that's kind of normal, and we can help with that. But the piece that is really very much absent is proactive statement of here's the culture we want, here's the values you have to model if you're going to live here, and here's the behaviors that you need to model if you're going to be a good citizen here. So with those elements, the biggest challenge we had was to help leaders see how getting values into a behavioral kind of definition, an observable, tangible, measurable form, lets them measure those as easily as they measure widgets out the door, products and services delivered. So the transition, the effort is really about what behaviors today are benchmark stars really demonstrating today around integrity and around cooperation and around teamwork. You've probably already got some great stars. All we want to do is find those behaviors, raise them up and formalize them so that the environment is much more a cooperative one, a team building one, rather than a screw your buddy kind of environment, which is unfortunately far too common. The results of embracing an organizational constitution and asking leaders to invest a huge amount of time in this, typically a culture change to make values as important as results, to have behaviors be embraced. It's an 18-month to 24-month long process. So this is not a quick fix. It's not a Band-Aid. But the benefits are pretty amazing. Our culture clients have found that they get 40% gains in employee engagement and employee work passion. That well-being piece comes on pretty fast because all of a sudden they're being treated with trust, respect, and dignity every day. That gain is huge because it leads to then people being more present with customers. So the customer service experience goes way, way, way better. So that's a 40% gain in 18 months, sometimes less. But the big one that senior leaders pay attention to is tell me about the money, tell me about the results. And what we've seen consistently over the past 15 years is results and profit gains of 30 to 35%. So this actually makes financial sense. But much, much more importantly, it makes sense around crafting a meaningful, desirable, productive, fun workplace for people to hang out in.
That's awesome, Chris. I know that's the kind of workplace I want to create. Thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us to talk about organizational culture and constitutions. For those of you who are just meeting Chris, you can learn more about Chris through his blogs, podcasts, and videocasts at his website, drivingresultsthroughculture.com. You can find out more about Chris's book at thecultureengine.com, and you can follow him on Twitter for all kinds of great insight. I personally love it when I see Chris's tweets come up because I'm inspired to think every day about the culture that I'm creating. So Chris, thank you so much for being with us for this segment.
Thanks for the invitation. Very much appreciated.